welcome. Hey everyone, it's me, System66, and this is my Resident Evil 4 review. Now, this isn't going to be a particularly structured review. I don't really tend to do that. I like to just make videos off the top of my head. I used to do structured reviews and stuff and videos, and sometimes I'll do it, other times I just want to talk about the game. I just want to talk about what I liked and what I disliked. So with Resident Evil 4 Remake, I just want to talk about this first, let's get this out in the open. This is an action game with horror elements, and small horror elements at that. It's more in line with over-the-shoulder third-person action games like Gears of War, or even Uncharted, Max Payne 3, Control, games like that. It feels in the same vein as those games. Now, yes, it does feel like the old Resident Evil 4 because the original Resident Evil 4 was the template for these other games to come through. It kicked off the over-the-shoulder third-person type of action game. And so everything else kind of followed afterwards. But this feels more in line with those other titles, those games where it slots into sort of like some of the best action games, created. It feels more in line with those, as opposed to the original Resident Evil 4, which had a lot of original ideas and concepts. And yes, this does, improve upon those, and it does kind of repackage those, but just better. Obviously, being able to aim and move and shoot. Stealth kill enemies, which I'm pretty sure they looked at Evil Within and Evil Within 2, and then they sort of went, oh, that's pretty cool, let's have that in Resident Evil 4, and just a whole other heap of stuff. There's more bombastic moments, more explosions, more just cinematic moments, let's just say that. It's got more cinematic moments, it's a lot more cinematic as an experience. Graphically, the game is beautiful. It does have a few texture issues that I noticed even on the PS5, but overall, it's got some nice graphics on it. Gameplay, it controls, at first when you're playing it's this is a hard one with gameplay. Okay, at first when you're playing it, when you're controlling it, compared to the original Resident Evil 4, it feels very floaty. It's definitely the control scheme and the animations and stuff all taken from Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3 Remake, but once you get used to it, it's fine. It's fine. It controls just fine. I had no real problems, no real issues. I do feel like Leon is less precise than in Resident Evil 4, the original. But at the same time, if you get used to it, it's fine. If I could sum up the controls compared to the original is more pinpoint and accurate. But at the same time, Leon feels like a tank. And with the new one, he feels more realistic, but it's a bit more floaty and takes a bit more time to get used to it. That's what I will say. Do I think the controls are better than the original? Like I said, both games have their pluses and their minuses. I think the new one, getting used to the floatiness of the controls, it takes some getting used to. And sometimes when you're trying to be precise with enemies later on, like bosses, the harder enemies, it can be a pain in the arse. I'm not going to lie to you. I did find some issue with that. I was trying to defeat Sadler or, shoot Ramon, and at the end of the day, Ramon is flying around the place, and Sadler's kind of just jumping and leaping everywhere. That when you have a rifle and you've got more ammo for the rifle, or you're just trying to pinpoint accurately hit these targets, it can be a pain in the ass. It can be annoying. Whereas in the original, if I remember right, you didn't really have much sway when it came to aiming down sights or aiming your gun, not to the extent that this has. And so you have to compensate for the sway because it's more realistic, and that can be annoying. I'm not going to lie to you. When I'm trying to pinpoint accurately hit Sadler's eyeballs, or I'm trying to pinpoint accurately hit Ramon, because there's only a small window of time before he zips around and fucking fires like acid on you. That's a new thing. We'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, when you're trying to pinpoint hit these bosses, it's a pain in the ass. It can be annoying. As you get better at the game and you just get more precise with your aim, just like Resident Evil 2 Remake and also Resident Evil 3 Remake, and also Resident Evil 7 RE Village, then you'll be able to compensate for that and you'll get quicker and better. So it really comes down to just adapting to the control scheme. Overall, the controls are fine. Stealth is handled really, really well. It's a lot of fun, and it's not unforgiving. You can kind of sneak about, and if an enemy spots you, it's because you were out in the open, you made yourself visible. Other than that, they react very well, and you can kind of just sneak around them and then take them out with the knife, and it's like a one-hit kill, they're done. So yeah, also the knife mechanic. Let's talk about the knife mechanic. So the knife mechanic is really, really good. I'm glad that they sort of updated the knife from the original Resident Evil 4, and they made it so much better. I can't even see another Resident Evil game not having this in, not implementing this in. And yes, okay, the more traditional survival horror Resident Evils shouldn't have this, but the more action-orientated Resident Evils should definitely have this. It's saved me a few times, definitely. Like, if an enemy's coming after me, I've got like about 5 Ganados, surrounding me, and then Chainsaw Man's coming with the chainsaw. I was able to parry him, and kick him, and then take out all the other Ganados. So really, really good. The knife parry mechanic is spot on. It's very good. It's one of the better additions added to this remake. Now, being able to run away like you could in the original, just get away from Ganados, find your space, then take them out. That's okay. It's not as good as the original. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of people say, "What? Are you crazy? You can move the camera around now and everything." That's all cool, but when Leon runs, sometimes he just takes ages to quick step, like to hurry up and run, and that can lead to you getting grabbed, or it can lead to a lot of frustrating moments because of the more realistic movements and things. That's why it feels like that, but it can be annoying. Whereas Leon in the original, it was just you hit run and you run forward straight away, just from 0 to 100. But in the new Resident Evil 4, he takes a while to get himself moving. So yeah, that can be annoying. But still, like, running away and create space in, turning around and taking out the Ganados, perfectly fine. Also, had no issues in Mercenaries. As I'd played through the campaign, then went into Mercenaries, I had no issues. Like, you do have to adapt to the controls in this game, unlike the original to an extent. Obviously, the original, if you're used to older Resident Evil titles, you can't sort of move and shoot, so you were just originally used to it, and it felt a lot better than those other games just because of the added movement and freedom. In the new game, if you've played Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3 Remake, then you will find this fine. You'll find it a lot more faster to control to an extent than those other 2 remakes. Having said that, I've watched a lot of reviews, including Synthetic Man's, a few others, and I do agree that porting, the Resident Evil 2 Remake control scheme over to the Resident Evil 4 Remake and not fine-tuning the way that Leon kind of moves to an extent. And while I understand they weren't going to change the gameplay mechanics that much from those remakes, they should have made Leon a little bit faster, just a lot less floaty. And I do think that it's a bit cumbersome at times. Having said that, it's just like nitpicks. You do get used to it, like I've said, and I don't think the gameplay mechanics are that bad. I just think that Leon could have been a tad faster and just a bit more reactive. But I do understand they want to keep everything feeling like the other 2 remakes, so it makes sense. Like I said, it's not too bad. It's just, it does feel a little bit cumbersome at times, definitely. Especially when it comes to Ramon, the Ramon Salazar boss, or Sadler. Now, this feels strange to talk about, but it's the first time I'm going to talk about it, and that's the haptic feedback from the DualSense when playing Resident Evil 4 Remake. I just picked up a PlayStation 5 recently, and I'd never played one before. I'd never touched the DualSense, so I didn't have a clue of what this controller could do. And a lot of people saying, I've had friends say to me, yeah, it's incredible. Like, one of my best mates, he was like, it's incredible, wait till you get your hands on this. I was talking to 2 other friends yesterday, same thing. They were like, yeah, the haptic feedback is incredible. And I didn't understand that. I thought it was just a gimmick at first. Having played Resident Evil 4 and realising that I had to squeeze the right trigger to fire the shotgun like properly, that sort of thing was really, really cool. It was very immersive. It made me feel more immersed in the game. When you're riding around on the boat, that like it constantly the right trigger will basically shudder, and then you'll just have to push it. It's incredible. I mean, a lot of you are going to say, well, if you own a PS5, you're going to know what I'm talking about, or you've played on one, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. But just the different kind of weights of the guns and how that feels. Like aiming the sniper rifle is a bit more heavy on the left trigger, and then firing it, you just have to sort of squeeze the trigger, the right trigger, just ever so slightly, and then with the shotgun you have to really just squeeze the right trigger to pump out that shell. That round, should I say. It just immersed me more into the experience. And I think with Resident Evil 4, the original, and Resident Evil 4 Remake, the amount of different guns on display, the guns you can use, the fact they're all sort of different, and they feel different with the haptic feedback, and just, the power of them and stuff like that. Wanting to collect them and firing them, a great experience. And Resident Evil's been no slouch when it comes to weapons lists and Capcom's knowledge of guns. Like in the original Resident Evil games, all the guns were actually named. They were brand named, but then they got rid of that. But it doesn't really matter. You kind of know what these guns are. They're just named, different things. Broken Butterfly, Matilda, stuff like that. Chicago Typewriter. So even though they don't have brand names, they're still recognizable, weapons. Speaking of weapons, okay. controversial, because some people are going to like this weapon, and other people aren't, and I kind of fall into the category of not liking it, and that's the new crossbow instead of the mine launcher. I actually preferred the mine launcher in the original Resident Evil to the crossbow, seeing as we're talking about weapons. And I didn't really like this weapon, to be honest. I've never really liked the crossbows in any Resident Evil. I think in Code Veronica it's a means to an end, definitely. You get the explosive arrows and you can kill the tyrant, quickly and easily. If you have those explosive arrows, it's a fast weapon. It becomes a fast weapon, and quite a reliable one during that boss battle. Other than that, the crossbow in Code Veronica sucked ass, and the crossbows in any Resident Evil games suck ass. I've never liked them, and I don't like them. With this new one, I really did give it the benefit of the doubt. I gave it a chance. I got all the way to the end of the game before I sold it, and it just wasn't working for me. You can lay sort of mine-style arrows on the floor and then bait people into, or bait the Ganados into them. But at the same time, the normal crossbows, they're just as weak as any other sort of crossbow in Resident Evil. It fucking sucked. It joins the ranks of Resident Evil 2's crossbow, Code Veronica's crossbow, and any other Resident Evil games that have crossbows. I didn't like it. I used it right up to the end. Barely used it. It was just in my inventory, and I only used it mainly for tight spots, essentially, if I didn't have any grenades or flashbangs. So yes, I didn't like the crossbow. Some people are gonna like it. That's fine. That's cool. But I just didn't feel like it was a very good weapon. Every other weapon makes its way from Resident Evil 4 over to the remake, and they're all really cool. However, I will say, yes, I do agree that every weapon should, or every handgun should, allow you to have the laser sight on. I'm not a massive Red 9 fan, but as far as I can tell from reviews, you can't actually attach the laser to it. And there's a few other weapons that you can't do that with as well. I believe the Matilda, things like that. You still get the stock, but the laser sight can be attached to the Punisher and other guns like that, I believe. Yeah, I forget the one I used. It was I can't remember the name, because I think it's a new handgun that's for this remake. Actually, just looking now on Google, it is the Punisher. So yeah, the Punisher's really cool. I used that one just non-stop throughout the whole campaign. I beefed it up, and leveled it up, and yeah, that was my main gun for a lot of the experience. It became really powerful. Now, every other weapon I did feel was improved. I feel like the striker was a lot more improved. The rifle was improved. Like I think it's the second rifle after the bolt action that you get. I forget the name of it, but yeah, that one was improved. A lot of the weapons, they felt fine. They felt cool. A lot of the weapons from the original are in this remake, so you're not going to be disappointed. And they all sound, look, and feel perfectly fine. One thing I must point out is headshots don't just do instant damage if you sort of level up your weapon. You kind of have to still go in there and kick them, but I quite like that. It makes the game harder, and it makes the Ganados more of a threat, so I had no issues with that. Trying to think, we've covered all that. The attaché case is still fine. In this new one, a lot of people are saying, oh, there's like black borders around the guns and stuff. It didn't really bother me. It's still a lot of fun to try and rearrange it and manage it. So yeah, the attaché case is in this. The difference is now that you can kind of move it around and swivel it with the right analog stick, and you can attach charms to it as well. So you get these special charms like a little teddy bear or an Ada charm or chainsaw, man, Dr. Salvador. You can put them and attach them onto the attaché case, and it allows you to sort of like pick up 50% more handgun ammo or 10% more health, stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. And the way that you earn those is you go into one of the merchants mini games, target practice mini games, and that's how you earn them. You get these coins, you put them in a little dispenser, and it gives you basically essentially a blind bag. You open it up and you can get one of the charms. So it's cool. I have issues with the new shooting gallery. I know it was like really silly and off the wall in the original, but in this one it's always pirate themed, and I found that to be very strange. It's very weird. It was almost like, for some reason, it made me think of Banjo-Kazooie. I don't know, because of the pirate level in that game, the music and stuff. So yeah, it was weird. It was weird. In the original, it's just sort of like, it's not pirate themed. It's just village themed and stuff. So in this new one, I could have done without the pirate theme. It just was strange. Like, it was very weird. It's still fun as hell. A lot more fun than the original. I didn't really mess with the original's mini game, but yeah, in this it's fun but really, really stupid. Now, upgrading weapons. This is going to take up most of the video, talking about the gameplay and stuff like that, just the game mechanics. Upgrading weapons is the same as it used to be, but now you can you can basically take on requests. You get these new requests, and to be honest, at first they're like, man, they're alright, they're cool, little sort of like diversion from the main sort of campaign, or the main, path that you're following. And at first, they're cool, they're fine. You know, the merchant has these blue notes everywhere, and he says, oh, can you take out these rats? You take out the rats, or can you go and kill this, this special enemy? And when you complete the quest, you get these like little spinels. I think you get spinels, and basically you can exchange the spinels for sort of extra loot, like a treasure map or a stock for the Matilda. Getting the Matilda itself, things like that. And they're cool. They're a great little diversion, but unfortunately they start to repeat as the game progresses. So you have to do the rat one about, I don't know, three or four times, and then you have to do, say, another 3 to 4 times. So they sort of repeat a little bit. And I think that the fact that there's only like 12 of them, I think, all in all, they could have thought of something better than just repeating the same ones over again. Shooting the blue medallions constantly, that's another one. They could have just done each one different, very, very different, but they didn't. They sort of repeated stuff over again, and it shows the difference between Capcom from back in the day that would basically scrap a game and just restart it from the beginning, to Capcom now, where you can see that they do get lazy, and to me, this is a little bit lazy. If they're going to do something, they should have done it properly. And all I'm saying is, yeah, you can have the kill, 3 rats side mission, but at the same time, don't repeat that again and again. It just shows that you were lazy with that, and you copy and pasted it. So yeah, the side missions are fine. They're a cool little diversion. You do them because the completionist in you wants to do them, But at the same time, they could have done each one significantly different and maybe made it a little bit more interesting. There are some cool ones though. I'm not going to lie. Like, we have to take out one of the armor Ganados. That one was cool because, as far as I know, it didn't show up anywhere else during my campaign, and it's a special enemy for you to take on. So it's like a gold, suited, armor suited Ganado, and that was pretty cool. So there's some cool ones. But there's some where you're just like, you could have done better with that. All in all, they're only little diversions, and they are literally, like, I would say 30 seconds of gameplay at most, some of them. So yeah, well worth getting involved in them and doing it, because it lengthens the game as well. So we've talked about gameplay, we've talked about combat and how the game feels, how it controls, upgrading your weapons, what weapons you get, and I can't think of too much else that regards gameplay, so we're going to move on. We did cover graphics originally. I said it was a very beautiful looking game. There was a few texture issues, but overall, like I said, it does look very good. The cutscenes are well animated. Everything's well animated. The Ganados are impressive to look at. They're even more smart than they used to be. And I kind of saw a few repeats, but most of them were quite different looking. And the upgrade in how they look is spot on. Like, the upgrade for the remake, yeah, spot on. So I like the Ganados. I like all the enemy designs. I don't want to ruin too much, really, but Verdugo, my favourite enemy within sort of Resident Evil 4, and also one of my favourite enemies in the series, he looks really badass in this. So yeah, very, very cool. A lot more cockroach looking, or scorpion looking than even the original. I do like the original's look though, I've got to be honest. I'm not sure if I prefer it. I think I prefer it over this one. There's only slight differences. They haven't gone too crazy, and that's one thing that I like. But they've just sort of, updated the look a little bit. So yeah, I like the original more, I've got to say. I don't know why. They do look very similar, but at the same time, I don't know. I think there's less going on with the original in terms of the face. That's why I like the original more than, say, the remake's version. But everything looks cool. I think that Salazar's redesign was fine. I think it's cool. It did remind me of Irving's boss transformation in Resident Evil 5, but it's just faster and a lot harder to try and hit him. And I don't know if I like it more than the original. I think I prefer the original's look and design, definitely. I just do. I think it's a lot more impressive and cinematic looking in the remake, but I think in the original it was just so weird and fucked up looking that I preferred it. So, it's just, I'm going by my taste, and that kind of Evil Dead looking like monster from the original. This isn't what this one looks like. It looks more like Irving's transformation in RE5, but just that it can move around and stuff, and it slithers around, and it's just actually more annoying in my opinion than the original, like Salazar boss. So yeah, it's not bad. It's not It's not a bad redesign. I just don't like it as much as the original. Sadler's the same. Basically, Sadler is the same, and I'm trying to think. A lot of other enemies and bosses are similar. So Mendes is similar. You know, the El Gigantes are similar. I can't think of much else that's been changed drastically. They have taken out, a lot of people would have heard this, but they've taken out the fat minigun sub-boss, and they've replaced him with these cow-headed sort of sub-bosses, or they sometimes have bull heads. And they're just, to me, I've got to be honest with you, they appear a lot earlier in the games than, say, the original sub-boss did. And I've got to be honest, they're okay. They're alright. They're just okay and alright. Now, I do think they're badass from a gameplay perspective, from a gameplay point of view, because it teaches you how to duck and dodge, you know, and not just rely on melee. So you have to think about two things: melee for the normal Ganados, and then duck, you know, duck under this giant Ganado's hammer or axe. So it's very cool in terms of gameplay, but at the same time, but to look at, it just reminded me of an enemy from like Revelations 2, you know. That's the thing. So I wasn't super impressed by it, but I didn't dislike it either. It's just like the typical cut and paste sub boss that you see in most, you know, newer Resident Evil titles, and this one just has a cow head and stuff. It makes more sense narratively. It's a lot less over the top than the fat minigun guy. I think just how silly the fat minigun guy was, it surprised me, and I think that's why I have a soft spot for him. In the new one, it's, you know, it's understandable that just one of the cultists grabbed like a cow's head, you know, or a bull's head, shoved it on his head, still with the blood dripping and stuff, and you know, and that's it. And they're the more heavier versions of Ganado. So yeah, it's not like offensive in any way. It just yeah, I think it was a little bit cheap. That's what I will say. Like, they could have come up with a better design or something more interesting. They really improved on the chainsaw Ganado, Dr. Salvador, though, and I love the fact that you can see the bag, but you can also see like the plaga that's already sort of erupted from his head, or he's about to. So the eyes are basically the plaga's like, I don't know, breathing holes or some shit. It's really messed up. So they improved Dr. Salvador, definitely. And you got like the Bella sisters as well that are really cool. They're basically unchanged, and nearly everything in the game is pretty much unchanged in terms of enemies and enemy designs and things like that. There's a few things that have been changed and redesigned, but most of it isn't. So Resident Evil 4 Remake pretty much stays true to the original's concepts and ideas, you know, and that template. And it doesn't try to change too much, unlike the Resident Evil 3 Remake, or cut too much, unlike the Resident Evil 3 Remake. However, like the Resident Evil 2 Remake, it does still cut things, and it has moments of what I would say laziness. That's one thing I will say. Now, with these remakes, unlike the original Resident Evil remake, if we want to put these up on a pedestal and put them up to standard, I think the Resident Evil remake is still the best. It's still the best remake over them all. And it's a great game in its own right, and it still holds up in terms of, like, you know, how graphically amazing it looks and how it looked back then. And yes, I might be a boomer, and people are saying, alright, boomer, whatever, but at the same time, you can't deny that that game still looks impressive. Like, the backgrounds are gorgeous to look at, like the art design, the feel, the tone, everything, the lighting. Even if it is pre-rendered, it's still chef's kiss. With the newer Resident Evil games, they've cut stuff, or they've changed things, or you can feel that laziness sort of creep in. With the Resident Evil 4 remake, there isn't too much laziness, but there are moments where you're like, that was lazy, and I don't prefer that compared to the original's take on that. So yeah, if we want to measure these games, I think the Resident Evil remake is at the top. That's how you do a remake. You just add content onto it. You just make it look better, etc., etc. Make the sound better. And when you first play it, you're like, this is a fully updated version of that original, and it's a true remake, you know, in the grandest sense. Now, a lot of people will be like, because you've only played it once or twice or 3 times, you might be like, what are you talking about? What do you mean lazy? It doesn't feel lazy to me. I'm not talking about the gameplay moments. I'm talking about moments where you first encounter Mendes. It's a great scene. A really, really cool scene. But in the original, you actually see the claws come out and you see him split, you know, in half and become that centipede boss. You still get that design here. He still splits in, well, his bottom half, like, you know, gets cut in half, and then he's still grabbing onto the rafters and trying to, you know, throw things at Leon, and that's really cool. Like, he picks up barrels, you can shoot the barrels. There's loads of great sort of cues and things like that, you know, and these bombastic moments, like I said in this remake, that are brilliant, and I would dare say are better than the original. What I'm actually talking about and referring to is the cutscene that plays just before that boss fight. In the original, like I said, you see the claws, and then you're like, whoa, what's he going to turn into? And then he splits in half and becomes that centipede. In this, he just walks through the flames and he's already transformed. And to me, that's quite lazy. Like, I'm not sure why they did this. I'm guessing it is just an artistic decision, but I don't like it as much as the original. It doesn't have the same impact, It doesn't have that same impact. It's like Alien Covenant revealing the alien doesn't have the same impact as the original Alien film that revealed the alien. And it's the same thing with this. It's like, you did that better in the original. And there's a lot of moments like that, definitely. However, there's some great moments that better the original. When Leon first faces Salazar, I like that he just cuts him off and shoots him. And that's when Salazar transforms. So, it does some things good, it does some things bad, I've only played this once, so to go back over it in my mind and remember every single moment and every key moment and cutscene, I wouldn't be able to do right now. I have to play it a few more times. But the boss fights, all apart from Salazar, are actually really well done, and I prefer them to the original. There are some cut moments. There is a cut boss, the U3 boss. I think that's being kept for Ada's DLC, but there are some lore explanations that reveal maybe we won't be fighting the same U3 we did in the original game, and with Leon, and also maybe in the same arena location. So, there are some things that have been cut, definitely. I'll list them off now. So, incendiary grenades cut, but you get a stronger, more powerful normal grenade. Ashley can't die in this. She very rarely gets kidnapped. The tram ride, that's only seen in the background. Breakable doors, PRL gun, the U3 boss, invisible insectoids, cultist spinning blade vehicle, split path where you can choose between the Chainsaw Sisters or El Gigante. You just fight the Bellas this time. Clock tower with jammed cogs. I remember that, but don't remember it as much from the remake, from the original. So yeah, I'm shooting shackles around Ashley. Yeah, that's gone, which I'm glad, because I didn't like that bit, to be honest with you. The dragon lava room, that has been cut, it's been axed. The spinning axe pendulum room, that is gone. The truck driving Ganados, that doesn't happen anymore. You just sort of make your way to the castle and you get in there quick as. Island trash yard crane, don't actually remember that from the original, but yes. Oh yeah, I do. That's been changed now, but that's been replaced with a much better segment and gameplay segment, in my opinion. So yeah, you have the chainsaw head beheading Leon, it doesn't happen. The island bulldozer segment, that doesn't exist anymore, which was a disappointment. Underground desert area, yeah, it's not really in there. I'm trying to think now. It's more mixed in with certain things, I'd say. Robot enemies. I'm trying to remember what robot enemies there were. Oh, like Krauser's little robots, yeah. Little drones, yeah, they don't exist anymore. Mercenaries, that hasn't been cut, that was DLC, but it has been cut from the main game, yes. Assignment Ada, yeah, that's not in it anymore. Separate Ways, that's going to be DLC. QTEs, they were cut, yes, there's hardly any in there. Killable Merchant, you can't kill him. Laser sight aiming as a core mechanic, only on handgun now, yes, very true. Ballistics, Gatling gun, cultist room, doesn't exist. Laser room, yeah, which is a shame, and throne room. Which is actually changed to Salazar's throne room now. So yeah, there's a lot of things that were cut, but there's a lot of stuff that was added, and to be honest, you won't notice it heavily, unlike the Resident Evil 3 remake. I'm sure super diehard Resident Evil 4 fans will notice them being cut, but yeah, it didn't offend me in any way really. I just think, why cut stuff? You should just add onto it or make it better. The giant statue chasing Leon, QTE section, that has been changed now, and it's been added into the part with the lift as you go up to fight Salazar. So yeah, you get this huge statue that's head just revolves. Salazar's statue's head revolves around and shoots fire at you, and you can actually blow it up. So it's just like a little Easter egg and nod, and also like the truck is shown just before the castle, just to have like a little nod. Look, boom, there you go. Oh, and the thing that all you guys want to know, and I'm finally glad I can talk about it, is Wolfie is still in the game. That first moment in the trailers and also in the demo, it's a red herring. That's another wolf. You do actually rescue Wolfie. It's later on in the game as opposed to the beginning, and he does help you with El Gigante and the rest of it, and it all plays out the same as the original. So yeah, I really like that. I was happy. I put a big smile on my face. So I'm glad Capcom, didn't cut Wolfie. They did that on purpose to try and just piss people off, and have people just super depressed that Wolfie wouldn't be in it, but he's in it. So yeah, that's great. So the cut content isn't too bad. Not to go into each individual sort of piece of cut content, but whatever they added or remade and redid, I liked. You know, I didn't have a massive problem. There are some things, like I said, where I was like, nah, that sucks. You know, the laser room is iconic. I think they should have kept that in it, or even the bulldozer section. But you know, it is what it is. And the segment with Ashley, where she uses a wrecking ball to smash through this wall, and Leon just has to fight off Ganados that are trying to attack the wrecking ball. You know, the dozer with the wrecking ball. That's really cool. I like that bit. So it reminded me a lot of what's it? The DLC for Resident Evil 5, where you're playing as Josh and Jill, and you have to sort of wait for the helicopter, or you have to protect the helicopter or some shit, and you have to shoot all those Ganados. That was very similar to this, or this is very similar to that. So yeah, reminded me of that, but a little bit more refined and fine-tuned. We don't really get that moment at the end either, where all the Ganados like rush you, and it's this like just little boxed arena. In the new one, you make your way up this hill type of thing, and yeah, and I think it's a lot better. I felt like it was a lot better, and it didn't outstay its welcome. And the whole bit with Sadler, he isn't really in like a lab. He's in sort of an underground cavern area. So that's very different. And then you get to Luis's lab, but there's some cool stuff with that I'm not going to ruin for you. But it's lore tied into the previous games, or at least lore tied into the remakes, and also the previous games as well, the older games. So yeah, look out for that. Read everything, every piece of paper and memo that you can, and book within Luis's lab. Just look at everything, inspect everything, and you'll be quite surprised, you'll be quite happy. So older Resident Evil fans are going to be very happy. And so we come to, unfortunately, the sound design and the music. The sound design is brilliant, perfect, have no issues with that. The music, however, is nowhere near as iconic as the original, and unfortunately this is a running trend with Capcom games. I think Resident Evil 3 Remake actually had the soundtrack in it, so it makes it even more bizarre as to why they've subdued the soundtrack in the fourth game's remake. And they did it with Resident Evil 2 Remake as well. And of course, you can buy the soundtrack separately from the original game, which is something they did with the original Resident Evil 2. I'm not sure if they did it with Resident Evil 3 Remake, but yeah. And this is really shitty, in my opinion. This is Capcom at their worst, at their lowest. And there is a lot of sort of cosmetic, you know, DLC content for this game. And again, it's Capcom back on their bullshit. This is them back on their bullshit. Luckily, there's enough of a game here with, you know, a nice long runtime for me not to be super pissed off. But I'm still pissed off. The music in this game is It's It's like Resident Evil 2 Remake. It's the same thing. It's subdued. It's not as iconic as the original. I can't work out whether Capcom do this on purpose, that you buy the original soundtrack, or they just want a more atmospheric experience, and if that's the case, then I understand it. But it's just not as iconic. That's just how I feel, and what I'm saying in this review, in this summary. It's just not as iconic, and they could have remixed it, and I don't know, just made it a little bit better. As it is, there's really no memorable tracks to this game. Same with Resident Evil 2 Remake. There's nothing where I really was like, oh, yeah, that stands out, unlike the original sort of, you know, Resident Evil games and their soundtracks and how iconic they were. I think Resident Evil 3 Remake is the only one that got the soundtrack right, definitely, because it just remixed and brought in the tracks from the older game, but again, still didn't feel as iconic. So yeah, same thing with this, and I don't know, it really sucks that Capcom have to be on their bullshit now, you know, and you have to buy the original soundtrack to hear the iconic tracks, especially like that one that plays whenever Ganados are attacking you, and it's like that jungle warfare sounding kind of just crazy beat and stuff. Like I love that track. So yeah, it's not as iconic. What can I say? So it's a bit of a low point, definitely. It's not so bad that it you know, pissed me off greatly, because they still have music in it and there's still, you know, some great sound design. It's just that it's not as iconic. That's just it. And now we come to the story. Rather than ruin it for you guys, I want you to experience it yourself. We're going to get into it. I would say the story is good. There are some moments that they change, which I don't understand. They try to be more realistic, but then they have Leon, you know, backflipping away from Bella's sister, trying to chainsaw him to death. It's just random things like that, and you're kind of going, why did you do a backflip? It doesn't make sense. You could have just leapt back, you know, instead of, you know, step back instead of like doing this backflip. But anyway, it tries to be more realistic, but also, you know, it balances that tone out with it being just as silly as the original. And to be honest with you, I'm glad they did this, you know, because before that, from Resident Evil 7 onwards, they were like, we're going for more realistic takes on the Resident Evil series, the Resident Evil games. They tried it with 2. They then tried to say it with 3, even though 3 had Jill handling a massive railgun and was actually unrealistic compared to the original Resident Evil 3, where it was just this piece of machinery that she had to get the Nemesis in front of so it would kill it. Whereas in the remake, she's handling a railgun that not even Fortune from Metal Gear Solid 2 could handle, and then it cracks the floor beneath her and stuff. It was ridiculous. It was so over the top and stupid that I just thought, I mean, having Claire hoist up a minigun and shoot Birkin at the end of RE2 Remake, come on, this is all really silly stuff. So to say, oh, we're trying to go more realistic and all this other crap, yeah, that's not the way to go. Like, you should just keep it silly, and they do for the remake, even though they do try to make it a bit more realistic. What they do well is characterization in this game, just like in Resident Evil 3 Remake with Carlos. They really made you feel for characters like Luis, you know, Ashley, just all these other characters. And yes, we're going to talk about the controversial topic of Ada Wong's voice actress and motion capture actress. Now, it's actually Lily Gao, and people going, who the hell was Lily Gao? Not familiar with you know who that is. She was actually at the end of Welcome to Raccoon City, the rebooted Resident Evil film that came out recently. I think it was like a year ago. Now, Lily Gao voices Ada in the Resident Evil 4 remake. She's different from the woman who voiced Ada in the RE2 remake. And to be honest with you, I wasn't that offended by it. I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, she's a bit wooden, but Ada is a spy, and she works for various organisations, and she's supposed to be like that. Was it the greatest performance ever? No. I can see why people were annoyed. Now, whether this is real or not, I don't know. Maybe it was a PR thing, who knows? But I heard people went over to Lily Gao's Twitter and just bombarded her with hate comments and just all kinds of things, you know, just harassed her basically. And if this is true, that's very sad behaviour. You know, it really isn't that bad. It's not that bad to the point where it angers you so much and enrages you so much that you've got to go over to her Twitter and attack this person. She was just doing a role that she got, you know, that Capcom gave her, and I don't think it was actually that bad, to be honest. I think people are overreacting a little bit, and she was going for the kind of super spy, you know, just deadpan, etc., etc. You can't really read her. So, and also in the face and the motion capture, she's unreadable. So I think that's what Lily Gao was going for. However, you know, just keep it to yourself. Don't go and harass her if this is true over on Twitter. That was ridiculous. Apparently she shut down her Twitter, all this other stuff. So yeah, that was really silly. The controversy that, you know, came out about Ada's voice actress. A lot of people said they didn't like Sadler's. There's one line in the game that made me chuckle, that made me laugh and crack up, and that was where he goes, oh, the lambs are escaping. I was just like, chill out, dude. You know, rein it in a little bit. He's like, the last lambs are escaping. I was like, that's such a bad line. It's up there with any other, like, quotable Resident Evil, you know, line. But yeah, it was really funny. Other than that, I thought Sadler was pretty cool. When Sadler comes into his character a little bit more, and you know, by the end of it, he's kind of like, you know, you insignificant insects or whatever he says, you ungrateful zealots or something. He says something like that. It was really cool. You know, it showed the desperation in his voice and the fact that he had nothing left. So it was cool. Not to get into spoilers for the end, but yeah, that was just a line I'm quoting, so it's not spoiling too much. But yeah, his voice actor was alright. Everybody's voice actor and actresses, with the exception of obviously Lily Gao's more just wooden performance, were good. They were good. So yeah, but I would say like Mendes was really subdued, like, and a bit subpar, to be honest with you. A lot of people haven't said that, but I thought Mendes' voice actor was a little bit subdued. Nick Apostlesides returns as Leon's new voice actor, and also his face model and stuff is the same face model from RE2 Remake, and they keep a lot of the characters like Ada and Leon, you know, who make a return in the Resident Evil 4 Remake. They keep them very similar to what they look like in the Resident Evil 2 Remake, so the continuity feels better as opposed to the original Resident Evil 4 and how different they looked to, you know, Resident Evil 2 back in the day. So the continuity between the games is a lot better. It's a lot more cohesive. Characters like Krauser are pretty cool. His voice actor was better in the original. In this one, I don't know. He's too high pitched, you know, less gravelly, and but he's not that bad. He's actually, there's differences. Like I said, like there's certain ranges and things that this voice actor gets out of himself that is better than the original's Krauser. So I like both Krausers. Ramon Salazar is actually the best character, the best baddie in this, and he's actually the closest to the original Ramon Salazar, so he was really cool. It's being super campy and just over the top again. So yeah, like voice actor wise, everybody's cool. And like I said, Leon, it feels like the same Leon from Resident Evil 2, just now upgraded and updated, you know, having undergone training from the government. So yeah, it's cool. Story wise, like I said, moving back onto story, we just took a little sidestep there, but moving back onto story, I thought the story is very good. I thought that the way it ties things to the other remakes was very cool. There's almost like a through line and a continuity upgrade with this remake that ties to RE2 remake and RE3 remake just ever so slightly, but it still ties to it, and there's things that are explained. And there's a character that's almost behind all of these things. I won't say who it is, but yes, I don't want to ruin it, but definitely read the memos, read the notes, read the pieces of paper, and you'll get some info and some lore regarding the other two remakes, and also things that are mentioned in the older games, the older Resident Evil universe, being brought over to the remakes, the new remakes universe and continuity. So you'll see what I mean, but they were mentioned in the older games, the older canon, and now they're brought over to the new canon because it still follows a similar canon to the original series. You'll see what I mean anyway. But yeah, it's very interesting. The story is full of high points, the cutscenes are great to watch, and it just moves at a certain pace like the original and just follows a lot of similar beats to the original, but it's a little bit more linear. I would say that in terms of story and pacing. It's very, very close to it. It's very close to it, but there are some different things here and there. So yeah, the story's great. I had no problems. The stuff they retell, things they change, I was alright with. I was fine. They updated it. It feels almost like for an updated audience. So I like that. I think they did a very good job with that. There are some things, obviously, they're little things, little nitpicky things that I didn't like, but they're really, really nitpicky things. They're not like, you know, massive issues, unlike the Resident Evil 3 remake. So yeah, it was cool. It was more streamlined, a lot more tighter. The lore and stuff was tied into the other two previous remakes, and I like that about it. So this whole new continuity and this new lore and the new universe that they're creating, it does sort of match up and tie together a lot better than any of the older games tried to do. Having said that, the first trilogy on PlayStation, that was perfect. It was just simple. It got through it to the end with Nemesis, and you know, it was brilliant. I loved it. And it was a little bit more mysterious. This tries to tell, like anything in today's media, it tries to tell the player what exactly is going on and how this is a key thing to this. And with the originals, it just held back and it just let you think of, you know, things that would be going on or things that happened, or it was more about being mysterious. This is, here you go, here's the answers, throw it at your face. So a lot of media does that in today's day and age because they think their audience are stupid. And so, you know, you just have to get used to it. But having said that, it's been a long time since, you know, a Resident Evil game has continued the continuity and canon and story as well as, say, these remakes have done. And so I appreciate it for that, definitely. I think the Resident Evil canon lore from the older series, the older sort of universe, was so sort of like, it was so muddled and just all over the place, and it just went left, right, like constantly, and just there's so much to it that it's cool if you get invested in it. But having sort of this new series of remakes try and connect everything, and you know, and the little nods and things and the connections to the lore, and just, I think that it works, and I like it. I like the fact that Capcom are going out of their way to try and connect it all. Did it really need connecting previously? Yeah, a little bit here and there, but it's just nice when you see things in this remake that connect back to Resident Evil 2 remake and RE3 remake, and it puts a big smile on your face because you're like, they literally went out of their way to try and fuse everything together and connect it all together. So it makes it a lot easier that the plots or the cutscenes or even the story is a lot more streamlined. At the same time, I like it for that. You know, I like that they've gone out of their way to do this. So it, you know, put a smile on my face. So the story was good, was overall good in this. It's handled a lot better than the original, but the original is still the first. You know, it was unique. It was revolutionary when it came out. It was something different. It was literally one of a kind. And the remake, unfortunately, doesn't have that. It's like going to see Jurassic World, but remembering how good Jurassic Park was and how revolutionary that film was back in the day. It's the same thing with Resident Evil 4 Remake. It's a glossy, nice looking, it plays okay, it plays well, you know, bombastic, just action game with horror elements, but it doesn't stand up to the original because the original was one of a kind, and when it first came out and we all got to experience it, it was something super different. And I didn't originally like that game to start with, but as I played more and more of it, I got what Mikami was trying to go for. With the remake, is it better than the original? I think it just depends on if you think the experience is more refined. I think it is a more refined experience. It's definitely a lot less of a crazy game compared to the original one. You know, there's a lot less crazy moments in it, but there's also some crazy moments in it, so it's still emulating that, you know, from the original. But overall, I think that if we talk about a more streamlined version of Resident Evil 4, you know, something that is a little bit more pleasing story-wise, characterization-wise, you know, just moments that happen, moment-to-moment gameplay, I think that it's better. But I still have a soft spot for the original because the original is the original, and that's just me. And I'm nostalgic, very nostalgic for that original game. Just like the original Resident Evil 2, I'm very nostalgic for. Or the original Resident Evil Director's Cut, I'm still nostalgic for that game. Sometimes I prefer to play that over the remake just because I love the cheesy voice acting and just how hokey and more low-key everything was, you know. It was the first of its kind, the original. So similar thing with the remake of Resident Evil 4, similar feeling. I do think it's a lot better game in some ways, and it's a lot less of a game in other ways. Overall, I think the best way to summarize this would be to say that with the Resident Evil 2 remake cutting stuff from the original, the original didn't need stuff cut. It was, to me anyway, a near flawless game. Yeah, and I loved it for that. And the RE2 remake cut stuff that didn't need cutting, or it just combined things together so you had less game time. You know, it made the sewers bigger, and I loved that. I loved it for that. I thought the sewer section was some of the best parts of that game. But when it cut stuff like locations or segments, or it just combined things together and there was less game time, you know, I was disappointed. I can't lie. It cut some enemies. I was disappointed. Yeah, there were only like 3 enemies, but I was still disappointed. Why did you cut stuff, Capcom, that didn't need cutting? And it's kind of like if you look at the original Resident Evil, the director's cut, and then you look at the remake of Resident Evil, it didn't cut stuff, it just added stuff on top of that. So, you know, my feelings for those games are very different to my feelings for Resident Evil 4, the OG. The stuff that it cuts in the remake, to me, was a lot of fluff and some silly, stupid moments. Even though it has its own silly, stupid moments, there was a lot of fluff that it got rid of and it cut. And because it feels like a more streamlined experience, and because it's more of an action game, more of a, you know, like I said, a bombastic cinematic action game, much in the same vein as something like Uncharted, Max Payne, Control, I didn't mind it because there was a lot of fluff that needed to be cut from the original Resident Evil 4. However, saying that, when they cut the laser room, which I personally loved, you know, I know it was stupid and over the top and ridiculous, but I personally loved it. It was iconic. Or they cut U3 because they want to put it in DLC, in Ada's Separate Ways DLC. Or, you know, that whole segment, that whole location is cut. So, where you fight U3, so that sucks. You know, or using Mendez's eye to open the door. Instead, now it's just a sellable item. That sort of stuff, I was like, why did you cut that? You could have just added it in and kept it in there. The stuff they add, really cool. It flows better. It flows more cohesively and better as an experience in this game. I won't deny that. You know, the castle seems a lot less ridiculous now with some of the stuff they cut. So they kind of, you know, they kind of make it feel a lot more cohesive and like you are actually exploring this castle in like a real sort of real setting, as opposed to, oh look, I'm in a lava room with big dragon statues. So that's what I mean by, you know, they cut a lot of the fluff and some silly stuff, and they replaced it with like more cohesive, more streamlined game design and story and cutscenes, etc., etc. So yeah, it does feel better for it. But some of the stuff they cut again in this, some of the more iconic moments, like the bulldozer, you know, fight and things like that, I don't see why they did it. It's a bit weird to me. That doesn't seem right. It seems a bit off. And then again, it makes me think, you know, it's a little bit lazy. But having said that, the original Resident Evil 4 had a lot of fluff, and they just sort of trimmed that off. And yeah, and I think it's better for it, definitely. So it's a bit of a difficult one, really, because, you know, it just depends on what type of fan you are of the original. If you like some of the silly moments, you're going to be disappointed. But if you didn't mind that and you thought, well, that's really stupid and over the top, and they cut it and, you know, just made it a bit more streamlined, they've trimmed that fat, then you're going to like this. You're going to like what they've done. So yeah, it all comes down to preference. Overall, if I was going to score this, not that I do scores on here anymore, but if I was going to score it, I'd give it a straight 8 out of 10. I like it better than the Resident Evil 3 remake, which was like maybe a 6.5 to a 7. RE7's like an 8. It's like a high 7 or an 8. RE2 remake for me is a 9 out of 10. The Resident Evil remake is a 10 out of 10. And then I'd say like Village, the newer Resident Evil games, because this fits in that sort of category. Like Village is, I don't know, like a 6. I think the Village and RE3 remake are my least favourite. And I think the RE4 remake comes a close second to RE2 remake, but I still think RE2 remake is a better game than RE4 remake. Because it's more survival horror, and I like the way that they handled the gameplay and game mechanics in that a lot more. Where Leon feels floaty and Claire feels floaty and a bit haphazard, and you know they sway when they aim. It worked better for a more slower paced survival horror experience like RE2 remake. In RE4 remake, just like so many YouTubers have said, I think they should have made Leon a lot more fluid and just a lot quicker on the draw. One thing I will point out though, I do love when enemies get close up to him and he does the John Wick like gun hold. That was fucking sick. But yeah, overall I think they should have made him a little bit more fluid and just, I don't know, just refined. As it is, it's still playable, it's still easily accessible, and you can still control him just fine. You just have to get used to it, But yeah, overall I think RE4 remake it's a damn good remake. I can't say after all that, after the whole video, I can't say that I didn't enjoy my time with it. I think you get a lot of bang for your buck, even with all the cosmetics DLC shit that they're trying to pawn off to you. I think it holds up as an experience just on its own merits, in its own right. So it's a great base game. If you're just getting it for the base game, you're going to get a lot of gameplay out of it. There's a lot of fun to be had, and it's still the same length as the original. It's about 20 hours or so. Can be finished in like 8 hours. So if you rush through it. But yeah, overall I think that the game time, the overall experience is an 8 out of 10. It's really fun. It's a really fun action game. I've stated that previously, but it's a lot of fun. So you'll have a lot of fun with this game. Is it perfect? No. Is it the best remake? No. Resident Evil remake is still head and shoulders above all of these. I think RE2 remake comes a close second. I think this is a third. This is in at third. I think the RE3 remake is last. One thing I will state with newer Capcom games regarding the Resident Evil games, the remakes, etc., Village, is other than Resident Evil 7, which incorporated VR, so it was something new and fresh, and everybody apparently loved their time with it, playing it in VR. The Resident Evil games aren't trying to innovate anymore. I will say that. They are innovating in some ways, but they're also not trying to. Whereas, with every kind of Resident Evil release, the games always try to innovate and come out on new technology and show you what they could do on this what these games were capable of with this new technology. With the new games, they do feel like Capcom had stated before, they do feel like an annual thing that they're getting out now. If I play Village and I play Resident Evil 4 Remake, I love Resident Evil 4 Remake way more than Village. But again, it's a similar experience. It is just shooting, these bioweapons in like an arena, and that's kind of how it's playing out for the rest of the games, like Revelations 2 and Revelations 1, and you see where I'm going with this? It's kind of, the newer Resident Evil games, they do feel very close to each other, I will say that, but just with improvements and better graphics and etc. And people might say, well, that was kind of like the old ones, they still had the tank controls, and I'm going to say yes, that's true, but they were more survival horror, whereas now it's more action-packed. And if that is your thing, you're more into Resident Evil being action-packed as opposed to survival horror, then that's fine. But playing Village and playing this, there were a lot of similarities in terms of how I felt playing the two games. So I don't think they're ever going to be like Ubisoft or EA, where they just get the same thing out over and over again. Like Assassin's Creed 1 looks just like Assassin's Creed, 12. But I do feel a little bit of deja vu playing, some of these games. I will say that. So having said that, it's still a great product. It's still a well-made product. So yeah, I highly recommend you go out and buy it. And if like me, you're going to get a PlayStation 5, I would say that would be your start game. So yeah, I'd recommend it. It's definitely a buy from me. It's a must-own title. You're going to have a lot of fun with it. But just don't buy into all the cosmetic bullshit that they're trying to sell you, because they're never going to learn. Just vote with your wallet and don't bother buying this stuff. There is some bonus content at the end of this, the normal models that you can collect and files and concept art and all that stuff. But we also have Mercenaries mode, so it makes a comeback. However, we have less characters that you can unlock. So far I've unlocked Leon, Krauser, Hunk and Luis. Luis is actually playable in Mercenaries. But we used to have Adar and Wesker. I'm guessing they're going to be paid for DLC characters, and maybe they'll just keep adding more paid for DLC characters. Or maybe they're already on the PS store. I have no idea. But yeah, they're the only ones I unlocked through beating the game. And you only get 3 stages. I believe it's the village, the castle, and the island. We used to have that really cool, you know, like offshore rig type location and level, and we don't get that in this, so that's unfortunate. But yeah, and I finished it. I got S+ ranks in the village and island stages, and then I got an S for the castle stage, and pretty much finished it, and then unlocked the hand cannon to use in the main game, and was able to buy it. So, you know, it's a little bit of a throwaway mode like the original was, but I don't know, it's got less, just missing out that one stage, it has less, and those 2 characters, it has less content than the original did. So I'm guessing that they're gonna make you pay for that stuff, or if they update it, maybe they'll give it to you for free, which they should do. But yeah, it got completed. I finished it, rinsed it completely. When I was playing Krauser, just like the original, I completely dominated. But I will say one thing, Krauser now has explosive arrows, and it's almost like he gets less of them. Like, you can still pick them up, but he gets less of them to sort of hold on your person. So it didn't feel as cool, like, because I used to just pop heads with, like, the arrows. But he still has his, like, you know, his special move, which obliterates anything in his path. And his knife is unbreakable, and also it's super powerful. So there was a lot of fun with the knife. So yeah, it's still a really fun mode. I'm glad they did include it. There's no arguments from me here. But at the same time, again, they scaled it down, and I'm guessing they're going to add like DLC and stuff and make you pay for some of the extra stuff. So a bit of a disappointment in that way, but also loads of fun, just like the original. More fun, in fact. Like, I had a lot more fun, but I feel like I completed it a lot quicker. But maybe that's due to my age. When I played the original, I was a little bit younger, so you know, who knows. And it's the first time Mercenaries was like as cool as that, because in Mad Jackals it's still really cool, like really cool mercenary mode, but not as good as RE4's. So yeah, maybe that's playing into it a little bit, where it just didn't impress me as much, but still tons of fun. So yeah, great little added addition anyway. We don't get assignment Ada, but I can see why. Like, again, why do you need that when you have Separate Ways, which is a canon, you know, DLC story? So yeah, it makes sense. Overall, Resident Evil 4, it's a decent package. I'd definitely go out and get it. You're getting a lot more for your money than a lot of other games, and it does come packed with stuff, and it's highly replayable as well. So it's definitely worth the purchase. And Mercenaries, yeah, it's fun. It will definitely keep you entertained after you've finished the game like multiple times, or you've just finished it once and you want to jump in there. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to end it there. I think Resident Evil 4 was really good. Enjoyed my time with it. And I think if you're a fan of the original, or you're just a fan of action games in general, I think you owe it to yourself to actually pick this up and play it. For the old school survival horror Resident Evil fans, I would say it's the same situation as the original game. If you don't gel with it, you don't like it, it's completely understandable. I don't like this as much as Resident Evil 2 Remake, and that's because I'm more of a survival horror fan. And when I think of Resident Evil, I think of survival horror. So yeah, it just depends on if you can look past that and enjoy the game for what it is, or if you really just like the survival horror Resident Evils, then you're not really going to enjoy this that much, just like the original. So it's a type of situation that mirrors itself just like the original, and that's what you're getting here. You're getting an action horror game instead of a survival horror game with action elements. It's the other way around. So if that's your thing, you can enjoy it, and you're a fan of the original, and you haven't ever played a Resident Evil game and you think, wow, this looks really good, definitely pick it up and play it. For anyone that's more of a die-hard survival horror fan, you might want to look at like Dead Space Remake as opposed to this, because that might sort you out a little bit better than this game does. But if you can enjoy Resident Evil 4 for what it is, this is well worth picking up. And so with all that said, I am System Check 66. Keep locked to my channel for more Resident Evil news. We'll see what comes out next. Is it going to be Resident Evil 9? Is it going to be a remake of Code Veronica? Fingers crossed. Oh, I hope so. Or, you know, just something entirely different. We do have a film coming out. I will make a video on that. because there's been some reveals recently, which is quite interesting, so I want to cover that. But yeah, until next time, I'm System Check 66. I'm signing out of here. Enjoy the rest of your week. Peace.